Greetings, comrades. Welcome to African History Club, episode number 59. I'm your host, Milton Alimadi. Thank you, all Patreons. We've been on a march of sharing knowledge for more than 2 years now. So in this episode, I'm actually going to introduce a new podcast where I've partnered with two other comrades. It's launching this Sunday, January the 8th. It's going to launch live at 12 noon. And that podcast is called Kumbukeni. And I'm going to spell it out for you non-Kiswahili speakers. So it's Kumbukeni. Kumbukeni is a Kiswahili word, and it means remember or remembrance. And that is going to be the focus of the podcast. It's going to marry African history to inform the possible solutions for contemporary challenges. That's what that podcast is all about. And that's the difference between that and African History Club. Here at African History Club, we have walked through the history, beginning with the African origins of human beings, and we brought it up to the contemporary era over the last 50 plus podcast episodes. So now that we're in the contemporary era, I've been tossing around many ideas and thinking, okay, so how do we continue this conversation since most of the history has now been covered? I launched what I called We Love African History over last summer. And on that occasion, I invited people for live lessons, as it were, every Saturday at noon for about an hour and a half. And I copied some of the style that I actually use to teach my students at John Jay. And what do I mean by that? Everybody gets to participate. I don't just sit there and go on and on and on and on. And that's what I tell my students at John Jay too. Nobody likes to listen to any instructor or professor just sit there and go on and on and on and on, and they tune out. And I think my students like my class for that reason. I don't let them just sit there and listen to me. I let them participate. I give them assignments. They come prepared. And believe it or not, everybody wants to participate. So it becomes very interactive. So I took that model for my We Love African History series, and I think it was highly successful. The people that participated gave me good feedback. So what I do is I would start off with a 10 to 15 minute summary of the assigned lessons for that week. And then in the first series, we had 15 people in the summer. So I would then go and call on everybody, each person by name, and then ask them to offer their own summary of the assignment. And then I invite others to comment on what that person just said. So it becomes like a very educational conversation where everybody's learning from each other. So that is called We Love African History. But that's different because that's based on giving out assignments and then coming together to discuss it every Saturday. Kumbukeni is going to allow me, together with two colleagues, so it's going to be three of us, myself and a young sister named Nduku. She lives in New Jersey. She's going to be the co-host. And then Adesoji, who is a brother who lives in the United Kingdom. I like joking with him that he's in the belly of the beast because Britain, remember, as Andrew Young said, is the mother of all racism. And I agree with Andy Young on that notion. That's where imperialism initiated and launched all over the world. So that's where Adesoji is based. And our first episode, as I said, is going to be this coming Sunday at 12 noon. And I invite you to join us for that first episode of Kumbukeni. Kumbukeni, I already gave you the spelling. I'm going to give you how you can participate. You can come to YouTube. We're going to be live streaming on YouTube. So you go to youtube.com/ and then the @ and then Kumbukeni 1. And once again, Kumbukeni is spelled Kumbukeni, and then the number 1. And obviously, I'm also inviting all of you, listeners, current supporters of African History Club, to support us on Patreon. And that is patreon.com/Kumbukeni. So it's patreon.com/Kumbukeni. You don't have to wait till the first episode, but if you want to see the first episode first and say, wait, is this something that is worth supporting? Then, of course, you're also welcome to do that. So this Sunday at 12 noon, please join us for Kumbukeni. One of the first topics we'll probably focus on is the recent U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C., where it was presided over by President Joe Biden. And here's my take on that. The Biden administration was selling that as a partnership. How can there be a partnership between a giant economic elephant and all these little mice from African countries? It's preposterous. It's not a partnership. What that summit was the United States version of countering what China has been doing. Over the last decade, China has been hosting China-Africa business summits in China. All the African leaders would come there, they would talk, and then they would end up getting billions of dollars in loans from China. And what does China get in return? China gets resources. China was building up it's an economic powerhouse now, all based on resources from African countries. Just like the West built their economies, their industries, using Africa's resources, China has been doing that lately. And of course, in terms of trade relations between China and the United States and African countries, it's more than 5 times the size of trade between Africa and the United States. So the U.S. is obviously very concerned, and that's the reason why the U.S.-Africa Summit was held. It's the second one. The first one was during the Obama administration. And of course, I criticize, because it's upside down. Africa has the resources. So why is it that the African leaders are running to the United States instead of the other way around? You see, and that's the whole paradox of so-called independence in African countries. These countries are independent on paper alone. They're not really politically or economically independent. We'll discuss that. We'll analyze that on Kumbukeni. We will discuss part of Kwame Nkrumah's critique in his book, which I highly recommended in the past. And if you haven't gotten it yet, I highly recommend again. Neo-colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And I'll just summarize it in a few sentences. Nkrumah said, after political independence, if African countries did not unite, they would not have the military power to protect their resources. And the West would continue to get it by any means necessary, whether it's overthrowing and killing Patrice Lumumba in Congo, which is exactly what happened in 1960, when the CIA basically killed the guy because he wanted a better deal. He said, okay, now we're independent, so Belgium, you can't be plundering our resources anymore. We have to renegotiate these economic relations. And Belgium said, no, we're going to kill you. And they did, with the support of the United States and Britain and France. And then Nkrumah himself was, of course, overthrown in 1966 because of his support, primarily, of Patrice Lumumba and for his advocating for African political unity. So we'll discuss that. And we'll show that so long as African countries are divided, these tiny little scattered countries, they will always be exploited. They will have all the resources, all the riches, but they will also have all the impoverishment because the West and China will get the resources at the price that they want to take the resources for. So people say China is better than the West. So I might agree to one extent. I would say China has never had a history of imperialism in Africa. China never colonized African countries. China never committed massacres to take over land in Africa. But we still have to be realistic. So long as China does not transfer technology to African countries so that they can also industrialize and use the resources independently in their own indigenous economies, then that's a very similar type of contemporary exploitation. So yes, I agree. China has not committed massacres or genocide in Africa, but China still also exploits by extracting resources without sharing the technology with African countries that would also enable them to industrialize, because that's the only pathway to building wealth and prosperity. So that's my critique of China. These are the kind of discussions we're going to be having in Kumbukeni. So I'm basically just giving you a little summary in the hope that you will indeed join us for the first episode. And if you cannot make the first episode, obviously we invite you to join in subsequent episodes. It will be every Sunday at 12 noon with my co-host, Sister Nduku, and Comrade Adesoji, based in London. So that's the first topic I wanted to get out of the way. And now I also want to thank everybody that supported my Kickstarter campaign for my book about the Battle of Adwa of March 1, 1865, when Ethiopia defeated an invading Italian army that was seeking to colonize Ethiopia. And that is why Ethiopia was the only African country not to be colonized by European power during that period of the scramble for Africa from 1880 to 1900, when Europeans partitioned up the African continent. So I'm very thankful that my Kickstarter campaign was successful. I was looking to raise $15,000 to pay the artist. The artwork is just phenomenal. It's just so beautiful. And it's amazing. I just saw the guy. This is how I met him. I saw some of his stuff posted. He tweeted, actually. So I saw it on Twitter. And he just happens to be a Ugandan as well. Uganda is my country of birth, of course. And he's a college student at the country's best university called Makerere. He's actually an architect student, but he's a phenomenal artist. So I said, listen, send me some samples. He did. I sent him the manuscript. He loved it. And I did not give him much instructions. I pretty much let him read each chapter and then select what part of that chapter he felt should be illustrated. And 9 out of 10 times, I agreed with his choice. So it was a very good working relationship. He's very, very good, and I felt I should pay him good money, which I did. And then he also found somebody who would do the coloring, and I was able to pay that person too. Thanks to the success of the Kickstarter campaign. I mean, obviously, I wasn't going to wait till the campaign was over before I started doing the work. So I was taking a lot of the money from my pocket, from my savings. But obviously, I had also faith and confidence that the story is so compelling that the Kickstarter would likely be successful. So yes, the book, I paid the layout person who did a very beautiful work in terms of the layout. It's beautiful. The cover is, I like it personally, so I hope you're going to like it too. And the book has been at the printer now for a couple of weeks. I didn't realize during the holiday season, they have a very busy printing schedule. But I am now informed that the book is going to be printed this week on Thursday. So this week, Thursday, which means next week, I start shipping the book out to all the people that supported my Kickstarter campaign. I'm very thankful. I hope you like the book. And I hope you support two other campaigns that I have in mind for two other books. But let's wait till you get this one first. You give me feedback. If you like it, you're happy, and then I will introduce the second book. And if you like that one too, then I'll introduce the third one. But let's start with the first one, which should be able to go out to everybody next week. So that's what I wanted to do today in this short episode 59, to explain the reason why I've partnered with these two colleagues to launch Kumbukeni, and why Kumbukeni will just continue what we started here with African History Club. And obviously, I'm not going to shut down African History Club. I will occasionally still come back and give my own individual episode, focusing on some aspect of African history that we have not yet covered, but also focusing on some individual Africans whose lives I feel need to be better known. There's one in particular, Felix Mumi, who was a Pan-African nationalist leader in Cameroon. And he was very feared by the French imperialist colonial power. They ended up poisoning him and killing him in the most painful manner. Poisoned in, I think it was in a hotel in Switzerland. That's how much the French wanted to eliminate him. And now what do you have in Cameroon? He was a contemporary of people like Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah. And so you can understand that his politics was not the kind of politics that imperialism likes. He was ultimately killed. Very few people know about him. He was very interesting, very courageous. I feel that he needs to be better known. So on this platform, African History Club, I will do a special on Felix Mumi. So those are the kind of episodes that we'll continue to do on African History Club. But for weekly presentation, I invite you to please join us on Kumbukeni, beginning this Sunday, January the 8th at 12 noon. And once again, you can also support Kumbukeni by going to patreon.com/Kumbukeni, Kumbukeni. And you obviously the live stream will be on YouTube, youtube.com/ and then the @ and then Kumbukeni, and then the number 1 at the end of it. So I think that's all I wanted to say today. It's been a tremendous relationship with you, all the patrons. I'm very grateful for your support. Many of you, of course, you met me or got to know of me from my late friend Michael Brooks' show. And had it not been for Michael, you wouldn't be listening to me even right now, because it was Michael who really encouraged me to launch a podcast. I guess in life, nothing really happens accidentally. May our beloved friend and comrade Michael Brooks continue to rest in peace with the ancestors. Of course, Lula, whom Michael loved tremendously and got to interview. What a remarkable world He's just been sworn in for his third term as president of Brazil. And of course, another story out of Brazil is the passing of the great soccer legend, Pelé. Pelé, who passed away a few days ago. So that's all I have for today. Please do join us on Kumbukeni. And once again, thank you for all the support over the more than 2 years now on Patreon. Stay strong, remain Pan-African, and continue fighting for the good causes. It's always worth it, and it makes you feel better as well.